It's great to see so many on here. We don't generally get enough to have a leaderboard, but we kind of do. So it's good to see you, Michelle. It's good to see you, Brady. Anthony Davis from Hugoton, met you last week. That's good to see you. So just a few share outs as we get started today. So I'm kind of in a pickle. I'm trying to decide. I always have these weird check-in questions, and usually I try to relate it to what we're going to learn about, but today there is no connection, absolutely none, just purely just starting off with something weird. So today is National Pet Day. It's also National 8-Track Tape Day. So I know everybody knows pets, of course, but I'm not sure everybody on here knows what an 8-track tape even is. So if you know what I'm talking about, I know Bert does. Just give me a thumbs up if you know what an 8-track tape is. Oh, everybody. All right, so here's the question. What's the last 8-track tape you remember listening to? Of course, Johnny Cash. Rebecca, very good. Who sticks? See, these are all the retro concerts you can go to now, right? I'm not planning my whole summer. Do the Carpenters even still go out? I don't know.
She passed away.
Yeah, ABBA. Yeah, I read that. She passed away. Oh, you're talking about Karen Carpenter? Okay. Thanks, Bert. Sorry, I got it mixed up. Somebody from ABBA just recently passed away. Hank Williams. Of course, Journey. I just remember those times of like fumbling with those things and jamming them into the player, right? And trying to get them to play and fast forward and all those things that, we take for granted now. But anyway, thanks for indulging me a little bit, taking us back a long, long ways. Adeline's never listened to one, so maybe Adeline, you can find one online. I'm sure they do some retro stuff online. Well, again, welcome to our monthly update. We are happy to have you on with us. Let's jump into the agenda, Sarah. Sarah, Meyer, and I have planned this out, and we're happy to walk through this with you today. So really we're going to talk about, and some of you have been part of these conversations already, so some of this may be a review, which is fine. We really feel the need to identify the current state of KESA and then talk about the future state. So there's a feedback review that we did last spring, but you also provided us feedback at our last monthly update. So we want to share that with you back today to further discuss that, provide you an update on where we're headed, and then have some discussions. So we'll have some reminders also, and obviously we always have a Q&A. These go for 45 minutes. We generally try to get to around 30 minutes in before we open it up for Q&A. We'll see how that goes today. We will be doing a breakout session, and there will be there'll be a Padlet with that. So we're looking forward to getting some questions in front of you and seeing what you think about. So we just wanted to start off really with kind of a basis for accreditation and design in KESA. So we've shared this multiple times, but we've been a team for the better part of a year now. And Sarah and Myra and I, we look around each other and we think, gosh, we need to share that again. And then we think, well, yeah, because people just need to hear it, and people we can't spend too much time on some of these fundamental pieces of KESA so that there's a broad level of understanding. So what our mission as a team is to provide accountability and support to move systems towards the vision for education in Kansas. That's simply put. So on the next slide, it talks about some of the actions that in the future we're going to be moving to in alignment with our mission. We are implementing next year yearly check-ins. So every system that's going through KESA will have a yearly check-in with at least one from our accreditation and design team. And I'll talk more about the regional executives in a second, but we're expanding our team to be able to do this. But it's more, again, about that accountability and support to provide. Right now, we're a team of 3 with 350 systems. So we are very focused on making sure we're checking in with systems and really keeping people moving along that continuum of school improvement. So those yearly check-ins will really be focused on the student outcomes, the process system is following, and that process will be standards-based. It won't be a narrative-based approach. It'll be more standards-based. The ARC will still review and provide a rating, and those ratings will still be based on the compliance of that system, where they are in compliance, the process, and the student results. On the support side, we also classify those yearly check-ins as support. And a lot of times the support will be finding, as we talk about what are some of the gaps that maybe your system has, and then connecting you to the professional development that's needed to fill in those gaps. So that's our role really in that support, will be connecting systems to the support they need. We will have regional executives. We have basically 3 of the 4 regions in Kansas filled. We are actively looking for a Southwest regional executive, and so that's the last one that we'll have. We'll make offers to 3 people already to fill out those other regions, but we're looking for somebody in Southwest. Those positions will really be focused on one-on-one coaching, and again, that connection piece to the supports they need. We're also moving to a regional OVT model, not completely. If you still like your OVT and you feel like it's working for you as it functions now with the on-site visit and all that, keep that in place. That's fine. But we heard from enough systems, enough of our systems this year, that they were having trouble finding an OVT, or trouble getting them on site. And sometimes we heard from people that the on-site visits just weren't really a good use of people's time. And so the idea is at the regional service centers, you can get together once or twice a year and actually have an OVT-like experience through that regional service center. And of course, like these, there'll be ongoing training and updates. So we have recently repurposed KESA, and my animations didn't work right. But the picture on the left is is it Fairleigh Dickinson? I think that's Fairleigh Dickinson, that upset Purdue in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Did anybody remember that was only 2 weeks ago that wrapped up? It's just like we're already moved on. But at the time we were talking about this, it was the middle of March Madness. So Fairleigh Dickinson upset Purdue, made it into the tournament, but they were a play-in team, right? They had to actually play in to get into the tournament. But one of the purposes of KESA is, Fairleigh Dickinson actually had to meet some standard just to make it into the tournament. Most likely they won their conference tournament. That's usually how mid-majors make it in. So they probably won their conference tournament, but that was a minimum standard just to get into the tournament. That's related to one part of the purpose of KESA. We want to ensure there's a minimum standard for student outcomes, for a quality process, and for compliance. So that's part of accreditation, is ensuring that minimum standard is in place in a system. The other side, and obviously that's UConn. Sadly, I had to retire the Jayhawks from this slide, but UConn won the national championship. We also want to recognize excellence in student outcomes through KESA. So that's another purpose of KESA. So it's a 2-part purpose, and that's really where we're headed into the future. So next slide. And then why are we making changes to KESA? The obvious answer is we're always making changes, right? That's what continuous improvement is. We're always looking at things and making changes. But I think it's important that we talk about why. So I think one of the main reasons is just a general dissatisfaction with our current student outcomes at the state level. You may have different levels of dissatisfaction with student outcomes, but as a state level, particularly in academic readiness, We know that there is a high level of dissatisfaction with where we are currently. So that's one reason. Another is, and we heard this last spring when we did several focus groups, just this lack of clarity and consistency around KESA. And I think we're making some inroads to helping with that, but just being very clear about where we want to go, how the KESA process works, and then being consistent and sticking with that throughout the cycle. And then the last one, and I think if you put it on a pie chart, all the responses, I think redundancy would probably take up 80% of the pie in terms of why to make changes to KESA. And it's really an easy fix. You know, we really limited the reporting, and now as we move to, and a lot of the redundancy was associated with the reporting side. So as we move to a standards-based model, I think that's going to help. We hope that's going to help a lot with the redundancy of the every year report responding to the same questions. We're moving to a continuous report that we talked about last time, and it'll be really focused on those standards. So with that, I believe I'm going to kick it over to Myron.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Feeling a little rushed. I was having all kinds of problems getting logged in this morning, but made it just in time. So as Jay was just talking about, we really wanted to get some feedback with regards to how we go about addressing those issues around clarity and consistency and redundancy. So if you recall at our last meeting, for those of you who are here, I guess it was our February meeting, we talked about these three things. If we do these three things with regards to process, results, and our OBT process, will we have addressed the feedback as it relates to that clarity, consistency, and redundancy? So if we, with regards to process, move to one cumulative report, so instead of having that every year full report, move to just one cumulative report across a 5-year process that is standards-based. So you have a standards base by which you reflect on those standards, and you provide artifacts, narratives, justification for how you are addressing that particular standard. On the results side, if on results we move to a more objective system for determining growth and improvement, taking a little bit of that subjectivity out of that, moving towards more of the, that leads you towards those quantitative state board outcomes. So that qualitative piece, we talk about social emotional growth, we talk about IEPS, kindergarten readiness. If we have some more objectivity there that leads towards those quantitative outcomes, would that help out with results? And then lastly, on the OBT process, moving to a peer review model that can be done in multiple ways. So we're talking about providing more flexibility. So you may say, we have a great OBT system. We want to stick with that traditional format. We like our partners, great. Or you may want to look at more of a like system format, another system of similar size, similar demographics, similar location. You may want to look at that kind of a partnership. Or a third option is doing more of a regional approach where multiple systems come together at service centers and provide that feedback and that collaboration around those areas. So those are three things that we were proposing to get some feedback on in addressing those areas of consistency, clarity, and redundancy. And here's your responses that Sarah kind of compiled for us from your feedback. So to what degree do these changes address clarity, consistency, and eliminating redundancy? The one report, so moving away from 5 full reports to one you follow across an entire cycle, definitely does more for lessening redundancy and less disruption with turnover. So as we know, there's been a lot of turnover at the district level, at the building level, new superintendents, new principals, as they come in. One report versus 5 reports, one OBT report versus 5 OBT reports makes that transition and disruption, less disruption and a smoother transition. Build statewide capacity. This really referred a lot to the work that we anticipate doing with the service centers. The service centers have provided great service for a long time. We haven't always been as intentional in how we do our work with service centers. So looking at this kind of, we talk about this regional peer review where we can do more work with them and share a more consistent message is one of the positives. Again, that 5-year consistency of school improvement. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the pros and cons that go along with that. Continuous improvement doesn't stop. And that was really kind of reflecting that idea that within this one continuous model, even though you've always been able to kind of go move forward and move back, and you can kind of use that fluidly, it makes it a little more difficult. This allows for a little bit more fluidity in that process. It lets you really do a continuous improvement process. For example, we want you to do some level of a needs assessment every year, not just at the beginning, but you want to come back to that and you want to review that needs assessment. So it just allows a little bit more fluidity in that process. On the rubrics, as I said, there were some pros and cons. The pros is they really do the feedback. I say the feedback you gave us is that the consistency and the clarity really will be impacted by having that one document by having the rubrics as opposed to the kind of open-ended questions that we've done in the past. So those rubrics will provide that consistency and clarity and really emphasize that standard. The potential con is ensuring transferability across systems. So we need to really be sure that we are intentional. So if you are a really large system in our state, you're a really small system in our state, you're a system that has a large percentage, let's say, of low SES students. I mean, regardless of what the demographics are, regardless of the size of your system, we need to make sure that this one rubric really can be defined and be applicable across all systems in the state. Okay, the next thing we asked was how might these shifts impact continuous improvement in your system? So what we have heard from you, what we've heard from everyone that we've probably talked to about this, we piloted this with our 11 systems that we piloted. Everyone has said the options for OBT is a huge plus. We've heard from everyone that it's getting very, very difficult to find OBTs, to keep OBTs, and this provides just a little bit more flexibility how to do that. So that's been a plus we've heard about from everyone. The continuous improvement, it is continuous. And the idea that with the amount of turnover, that this will help support that continuity, support that change and turnover and change within systems when you have everything documented in one report. Less time spent reporting is a good thing. I will quote Jay Scott. We do not want to lead the world in reporting, and we do recognize that in our last system there was a lot of reporting, and when we were doing 5 yearly reports, there was a lot of redundancy in that. So we do feel like by lessening the reporting, it allows you to focus on the important work that you need to be doing. Peer collaboration and learning would be very helpful. I mentioned, we had done our pilot with 11 systems, and when we talked about the OBT process, what we're kind of referring to now as a peer review, because there are different models for that. Everyone said the same thing. The value was in the collaboration. And people were saying, we don't have the opportunities to do this. We don't have the opportunity to sit with other systems and learn from each other. So that we believe will be a real support for all the systems involved. Worry that we'll focus too much on lag data. I think it's a legitimate concern that comes up because we are really trying to get to that balance of process and results. Having a really good process is important, but if it doesn't lead to results, then we need to go back to that needs assessment and figure out why, right? But we don't want to get overly focused on one side or the other. And I think the concern here is some of the data we use is lag data, and we need to make sure that we're also validating that process of improvement. And that kind of gets to that last piece, but it kind of goes along with that. keeping the story in the forefront. Tell us about your system. Tell us about your improvements. Tell us about your work. Don't get completely lost just in the numbers. Lastly, we had an open question and comment section on there, and I believe Sarah just took these right off of those sheets. So a couple of your comments. Make sure the focus does not fall solely back on state assessment. Kind of goes back to that last piece that we just talked about. Keep focusing on growth and process. And again, we feel like it's important we have that balance. You might set some data numbers, you might set some goals for yourself, but are we progressing? Are we moving towards where we want to be? So maintaining that improvement focus. Make sure accreditation is about improvement and not just a rubber stamp. The next comment, make sure that the reporting timeline aligns with the work. Once again, I think we're going to have more flexibility in how this in continuous improvement. We know it's not always just a straight linear line. So within this new process that you will be able to align your work with your reporting, knowing at the 5-year mark, we're going to come in and do an accreditation visit, but you can align that and pace it with yourself because it's all in a 5-year plan. And then OBT changes are needed, and we've heard that consistently, and we plan on seeing that through. And then a few questions that you left, some lingering questions. How do we ensure that the report is relevant to each system regardless of where they are in the cycle? You'll note one of the things we did this year is we start looking at, potentially making transitions to new documents. We said everyone focus on needs assessment and goals. And that was very intentional because we know that as we move into this process, people are going to be at different parts of that cycle, get that first piece clearly down, do a really solid needs assessment, get your goals set, and then we can all start moving forward from there. And you can paste that document as to where your system is. Systems need to use rubrics and tools in order for them to be impactful. Rubrics need to define and add clarity. How will we ensure that everyone knows them and uses them? That's great. 3 comments there that I think are really important. Number one, we fully believe that the rubrics will be impactful. We just clearly defining, not just defining the standards, but actionable standards, things that you can actually use that can drive the work in your system. We think is critical. How do we ensure that everyone is using those? We fully anticipate that there will be a lot of teaching around these tools, a lot of collaboration between us and collaborations with the service centers and other supports in the state to get a consistent message delivered widely across the state. That's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort, but we think there's a lot of value in teaching those new rubrics and tools. But Jay, I'm going to kick it back to you.
All right. Thanks, Myron. And that was number one. Thank you so much for the feedback. We definitely value your feedback. We want to make sure that each time we have you as our audience, we want to reach into your minds as much as we can and pull out all those thoughts that you have about these things. That really helps us shape, and it helps us, improve KESA moving forward. And I do want to say something before we jump into securing accountability. I think we spend so much time. I've noticed that when we go out to service centers, we have trainings, things like that. There have been a lot of questions around the technical side of continuous improvement of KESA in terms of the reporting. How do I get logged in? How do there's a lot of time we're spending on the technical aspects when it could be we're spending time on the real work of continuous improvement. So we hope that as we move forward, that I told Myron and Sarah this yesterday, we'll know we're getting somewhere when the questions we're getting are what we found this out in our needs assessment. This is a gap that we think we have. How can we move through this? As opposed to how come I can't get my goals to show up in my system level report? I think there's always going to be some of that, but there's been too much of that. So I think as we move forward, that's going to be an important piece. We want to get it back to the real work of continuous improvement. So some of you know this. If you know me, I'm an avid golfer. That doesn't mean I'm good. That just means I like it. And so, of course, as a parent, I got my sons out on the golf course when they were pretty young. I didn't learn until way past college. And so I thought, well, we'll get them started early. So I would take them out to the golf course early on. And of course, they were, and I'm using this term as nicely as I can, they were highly incompetent at golf. But that's the way it should be, right? You don't just jump out there and start and you're totally competent with it. I think as it went over time, though, I noticed like I was having to drag them out to the course at the beginning, right? No, we're going to go out there. No, I don't want to, Dad. I would take them out there. And now I've got a sophomore in high school who loves to play golf. I don't have to ask him. He goes out on his own. I actually am telling him, hey, I can go with you, right? I can go with you out to the golf course. That's all he wants to do. So I was thinking about this. We've done a book study on coherence, and Fullen talks a lot about the importance of securing accountability. All the planning, all those continuous improvement, that's important. Another aspect that's really important is securing accountability. And Fullen makes a really good point. External accountability by itself is not effective. You may get some results in the short term, but over time, you're not going to sustain that effort. If I would have continued to drag them out to the golf course, right, they would never have, in my opinion, gotten competent at golf. Now, it's still a question if they're competent now. I like to tell them that. But both my sons don't have any external accountability now. It's all internal accountability on playing golf and getting better at golf. So what I'm saying with this is KESA can provide some accountability, some external accountability, but it's got to be internal accountability in the system that really drives it. You have to have those two together. And so I think that's where we're headed with the discussion today is how do you, I'm looking at a lot of school leaders here, how do you build the internal accountability you need from your teachers, right? You all probably provide some external accountability. How do you get your teachers to have that internal accountability towards your KESA goals that's needed to actually reach those goals? That's the question that we really want to take on today. And so as we move into our breakouts, I really want you to talk about that in your breakout session is what are the conditions necessary for teachers to own and account for the student outcomes most in need of improvement? The second question is, how do you go about building and ensuring that internal accountability down to the classroom level for student data, for your student outcome data that you most value? And then just kind of a wrap-up question as you end this year and you turn back in and you look and you reflect with your internal reflection and accountability, how can you instigate that towards the end of the year with your staff? So what time is it? It's 9:30. Okay, so maybe we get to the first question in the breakouts. So, and if you spend all your time on that, that's great. There is a Padlet. We really appreciate if one person from each breakout would jump into that Padlet and actually take the, just list some of the responses to the questions. Again, we're not going to have as much time. So if that first question is all you get through, that's great. So let's go for 7 minutes and then we will come back, debrief a little bit, and then we'll open it up, have some reminders, then open it up for Q&A. Okay, Sarah, I think we're ready to go. Have a good discussion. Okay, I think we have everybody back. So let's, first off, I was mentioning to Sarah and Myron how nice it is to have the Padlet because we can actually see what you're talking about and kind of help debrief with that. So I hope you had wonderful conversations. It's a big topic. building that internal accountability, that ownership piece is really key. And what I have read from the responses, I just kind of took some notes and noted that one thing that groups talked about was the importance of alignment, that teachers actually see the direct route from the goal down to their classroom level, right? They see that alignment piece. It's very clear about that, and they feel like they've got some ownership, and they can see how they're impacting that goal. The collaboration piece is big. I know that I've worked with many systems that do a great job of involving their teachers in the discussion levels at the very top, at the district level on goals. I think that's a key piece, that collaborative piece, so that builds that ownership that you're wanting to see from your teachers. So is there anything, those are the things that I kind of captured. Anything else that there's a burning share out there of things to build that internal accountability in teachers? I think I've seen 3/4 of you looking at the clock. So that was officially a 7-second wait time. So I always try to do that, maybe around there. So thank you for that. We will continue to follow the process of sharing back your feedback at the next monthly update. I'm not sure when that is. Sarah, we'll get to that at the end, but we will share that. So we're getting this PLC feel to feedback, reporting back on it, reviewing it, and working through it in that manner. So back to our slides, and I think I'm going to turn over to Sarah for some reminders.
Yep. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of the reporting adjustments for this year. We know that systems that are in their 5th year, going before the ARC and the state board, will do everything that's been expected of everyone else, so completing the report in full. But knowing that we are transitioning to one cumulative document that's standard-based, we want to make sure that we are honoring everyone's time. And like Myron said at the beginning, not leading the world in the rigor of reporting, but really giving you that opportunity and that time to do the work. So for this year, systems in years 1 through 4 will address compliance and assurances, which should be pretty simple. And then the section that we really want you to put some intention and attention to is that needs assessment process and goals. So engaging in that work of continuous improvement and making sure that it's aligned and it's embedded throughout your system, and facilitating that ownership at all levels, really making sure that that work is getting down to the classroom level. So the link for that is in the chat. So if you want to review those reporting adjustments, feel free to review that fact sheet. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. But one of the things that we rolled out last month was our culture survey, which is a perception survey that any school system can use to really take the temperature of culture, the culture that exists. So looking at 5 areas of shared vision, collective efficacy, the area of inquiry, innovation, and exploration, psychological safety, and then the degree to which leaders model learning and support staff in engaging in ongoing growth and development. So thinking about that internal accountability and that coherence and alignment and building the capacity of teachers, it might be really helpful for you to know what is the culture in your buildings, what culture exists in your system. Do teachers feel empowered to work together? Do they feel as if they can make a difference? Do they understand where your system is going? Those are important questions. And this culture survey can really give you some helpful insights into kind of figuring out what is the current state of your system as it relates to culture. And where might you need to really develop the competencies of staff and the leadership capacities of staff to engage in that work of continuous improvement. So this could be a really nice tool when thinking about how are you going to continue to build that internal accountability for figuring out where are the strengths in your culture and your system, and where might you need some focused attention so that you can make sure you're creating those conditions for success and internal accountability. So we have a whole page of resources about the culture survey where you can do a little bit of digging, and I'm more than happy to Zoom with you, answer questions. So again, the link to all of those resources is in the chat. And with that, I think we're ready to well, I'll close out by saying that we will meet one more time this year, May 9th. So same day, second Tuesday of the month, 9 a.m. And that'll be our last one for this school year. So we'll go ahead and stay on. And if there's any questions, feel free to unmute.
So there's 2 Kyle McClures on here today, so we were getting double thanks in the chat. Hey, one thing that Sarah mentioned about the culture survey, if you're wondering about what your teachers feel about their ownership and their collaboration, the alignment piece, those are questions that are all part of that culture survey. So very important. I just want to connect the dots there. So as we typically do, we will stay on for any questions if you have any. For those of you who don't and you're ready to head off to your next thing, thanks for showing up. We appreciate it. We'll see you in May, if not sooner. Take care, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Sarah, you had said that the STAR rubric, conversation is, you're not ready to release anything. So we've built our 2 new goals, and completing the STAR rubrics is part of that plan. So the sooner that you can let us know if those are still around, if they're changing or whatever, it would be great, because, and plus there are a lot of work to do. So I don't want to spend a lot of work and effort into something that's going away.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that the state board outcomes are still the state board outcomes.
Sure.
And so any goals around that, would still be relevant.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Sarah.
We were one that did the component-based analysis as part of our needs assessment. Is that still going to be part of the process? Is the culture survey different or additional, or where do those 2 things stand?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the CBA really kind of took all of the different things, initiatives, parts of school, and did just kind of high level look at it. So leadership and culture was one strand in that CBA. It had maybe 5 to 7 questions. So the culture survey is really just a deeper dive into that. So they're complementary. The CBA is really just kind of that broad, gives you that holistic look, and then you can kind of dig deeper. So the culture survey is just one way that you can dig deeper. So they're complementary, they're supportive, they're not competing. You could do one and not the other. But again, the culture survey just takes that specific area of school and just does a deeper dive into it. So the CBA will maybe adjust a little bit with some language tweaking to match the standards, but any tool that you've used this year will still have a through line moving forward.
My question kind of goes along with that. We've done the culture survey through TASN in the past.
Okay.
As we move forward and we're going to start year 5 next year, do you see this culture survey being kind of required by every district, or that, I mean, there would be some consistent data that you guys would look at if we went that direction, or do we still have the autonomy to choose our own?
I think with this area, there would still exist some autonomy. My recommendation would always be pick one that works for you and stick to it. That way you do have consistent data. So if you had a culture survey that you were consistently using, continue to use that so long as the data and the feedback is really meaningful and there's something that you're tracking. But I don't think the culture survey is something that would become a required tool, or that this particular culture survey would become a required tool.
All right,
Consistent data would be the priority, in my opinion.
I have an easy technical question that I think I know the answer to, but I want to confirm. I was looking on my calendar, trying to get prepared for the next couple of months, and I have on their KSDE KESA end of year meetings. I think I read that those are not a thing anymore. Is that correct?
Yes. So originally we had scheduled an end of year wrap up for April 18-20. We decided that it would just be simpler and more in line with where we were to cancel those and just add in the May monthly update. Just keep the same cadence and just add it to May. So we did put in announcement in KSDE Weekly last week. We'll probably run it 1 or 2 more times just to say that those end of year wrap ups have been canceled and that we just decided to add in the May 9th meeting just to keep with the same cadence and flow.
Okay, yay. Yay for time back. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. What else? Didn't mean to dominate the Q&A. Just kind of got on a roll.
We'll let you have it.
Well, speaking of giving everybody time back, we're going to go ahead and sign off.